the price tag of games. $80 games are becoming a thing. The newest conversation is around The Outer Worlds 2, which is the second game to be listed at $80 base price. Obviously, the first was Mario Kart. Months ago, when Nintendo came out and said, Mario Kart World is going to be $80 for the base game, everyone, including us to some degree, flipped out. We said, come on, this is ridiculous. We just went up to $70. Also, Mario Kart, we know it's a lower budget game compared to Last of Us or Spider-Man or whatever. It's not that it's low budget. So everyone was like, this is going to set a trend. Like, this is going to be it. The 80 is going to be the new 70. Every game is going to be this cost. And I'm here to offer a little bit of optimism towards it, but also there is some negativity, of course, with that. And that the fact that, I recently just bought Mario Kart World, and I think it was worth 80 from the perspective of it is in like the top 5 best-selling franchises on planet Earth. So it's one of the most sought-after games there is. And it is the premier karting experience. Now, I know Michael and I's favorite kart game is Crash Team Racing. But despite saying that, it is nowhere near as popular, and it is on a wide scale not seen as the best kart racer by any means. So to be the premier kart racer and to be in the top 5 highest grossing, best-selling franchises of all time, $80 makes more sense for that game, in my opinion, even if it didn't cost as much as other games that are $70. But then you get to the next game that went to $80, and that's The Outer Worlds 2. And it's interesting because that Microsoft made this decision, because anybody who really knows Obsidian, for their entire time as game developers, they've kind of been the team that does a lot with little and makes games that are more high AA, low AAA. They cut corners that make sense and then go hard in the paint in areas that fans love, like their writing and their character development. And they've spoke over the years about how they're not trying to build the biggest games, and they're not trying to compete with the highest of AAA. And their prices have reflected that, and their games have reflected that. And now they're the ones going right after Mario Kart to say $80 is the price of our game. And if you play The Outer Worlds 1, which of course Outer Worlds 2 seems to be more ambitious, more expensive, has a lot more going for it. The Outer Worlds 1 was a smaller game. You could beat it in under 20 hours if you didn't do all the content. It was like a Fallout New Vegas light. It didn't have the best gameplay, and even though Outer Worlds 1 sold well, and I've said this so many times, I know it's probably becoming a running joke, The Outer Worlds as a franchise is just a game that doesn't have much riz. It's a game that people don't really look at as high caliber. Nobody talks about The Outer Worlds as this really cool series that they can't wait for the next entry in. It's kind of just a good franchise that people like and has its audience, but it doesn't have the name brand power of Mario Kart or Halo or God of War, and it's the first game to be $80. And I don't think that's a good decision. As Michael and I talked about off microphone, Obsidian did come out and say, this was Microsoft's decision, not theirs.
Yeah, they're taking up in Xbox.
Yeah, it's not really a surprise that Microsoft has done this. They're the ones who have paid to acquire Obsidian, and they're the ones putting this in Game Pass for a very cheap price. And it's pretty clear that they're saying, hey, if you don't like the $80 price, just go get Game Pass. And that certainly is an option, but it feels kind of crummy that they're making this game $80 and basically saying, if you want to play it cheaper, you're not going to own it. You're going to subscribe to our service. I think it's a bad... Yeah, I think it's a bad decision for Obsidian. I think this was going to be their breakout moment as a true huge game. Because even Avowed that came earlier this year that I really loved, it was more smaller scale, and Outer Worlds 2 seems to be huge. It's really not really the extra $10 that's so hard to stomach. It's that in a world where Death Stranding 2 and Ghosts of Yotei and Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta and Ninja Gaiden 4 are all coming out at $70.
Yeah,
you're coming out at $80 as the freaking Outer Worlds 2.
Bad look.
Rizless game. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Kojima's next big game is cheaper than The Outer Worlds 2. I get it. It's Microsoft's decision. It's a Game Pass. I think it's a bad move, but we are certainly moving towards the highest of end AAA games adopting this $80 price tag at the top across the industry. But we've also seen, this is where the optimism comes in, we've also seen a lot of games coming out lately that are not even at 70, that this variable pricing is coming out, and games are picking different starting prices, and it's really resonating with gamers in an awesome way because, I know if I see a game that's $50, if I was already interested, the $50 almost makes me feel like, oh, I'm getting a steal, so I better just go ahead and buy it. And I think games are seeing a lot of success in this space, and I think it's going to make publishers kind of wonder every time they go to price a game, how do we want to price this? Because we saw what Clair Obscur did. Clair Obscur did at $50. We see what Mafia the Old Country is doing for $50. We see how that turned out. Should our game be cheaper, or are we better off? Do we have the confidence to say our game is going to be at $80 and you're going to buy it and we're going to sell? And some of the games I just wanted to list it here, I kind of wrote these down before we started just to give an example for the variable pricing, the options that we have as gamers. We have, like I said, Clair Obscur, Expedition 33 was $50. Oblivion Remaster was $50. Mafia, the Old Country, the new Mafia game, that's only $50. South of Midnight was $40. Elden Ring Night Reign was $40. Gears of War Reloaded coming out later this year is $40. Last year, Hellblade 2 came out at $50. Spider-Man Miles Morales launched with the PS5 at $50. Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 and 4 that's coming out here soon is, I think it was 40, maybe 40. It's 50, but it's 40.
I think it's 40.
Yeah, it's either 40 or 50, but it's not full price. Yeah. Metroid Prime Remaster that came out last year was 40. Hi-Fi Rush that came out was 30. Now, I understand some of these games are not, the biggest games in the world, or they are remakes, remasters. I know Spider-Man Miles Morales didn't have as much content as like Spider-Man 1 did, but it certainly opens up this discussion for a certain size of game and a price that works for gamers a lot better. I know that Uncharted game, Lost Legacy, wasn't full price either. Was that $50? Do you remember?
So I got Lost Legacy for free because so just long story short. So when Uncharted 4 is coming out, they're like, hey, we're going to have a single player DLC for this game. So I paid like an extra $10, I think, for that edition. And then they were later like, oh, actually, no, it's going to be its own thing. But if you paid that extra $10 for that edition before Uncharted 4 came out, you get it for free.
That's awesome.
But I think if you bought it standalone, it was 40, I think.
40, okay.
I think.
Yeah, I know the Ratchet and Clank reboot was also 40.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know a lot of these games I'm mentioning, they are literally remakes or smaller games, but when it comes to something like Clair Obscur, that's a lot of people's game of the year.
Yeah, it's mine.
And a lot of people are going to care about Clair Obscur more than the Outer Worlds 2 at 80. And I know it's not fair to directly compare these games. They're not going for the same thing. And I've also been around saying for years that games are too cheap for how much they've increased in cost as time has went on. I mean, games were $80 back in the early 90s, and then they went down to like $50 and then up to $60, $70. Now we're back at $80 again. So, games like Grand Theft Auto or the next Elder Scrolls, they're going to charge whatever they're going to charge. They're going to sell just fine. But I think it's exciting that we have this variable pricing going on, and we're starting to see some really great games, some Game of the Year candidates coming in at this lower price. I know there's a game coming out in a couple months I'm a little bit interested in. I haven't pre-ordered anything, but Lost Soul Aside is coming out for $60 as a base price, which now feels like a deal because it's $10 or $20 cheaper than a full-price game. But I don't know. What are your thoughts, Michael? Do you feel, if you love the game, like if you're super hyped for it, so like The Last of Us 3, I'm guessing you probably have no problem paying $80 or $90. I know you don't want to pay more, but I'm guessing you're probably going to pay whatever it costs when it's your top-tier favorite game, right?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And yeah, like you said, I don't want games to get that expensive, but it both ways. I understand that they probably could cost more due to the budgets and everything. I get it, but from a consumer perspective, it's kind of a hard pill to swallow because just 5 years ago we went from 60 to 70, and then now this quick because we were at 60 for how long? I mean, a long time, a couple generations,
10 years or more.
Yeah, it was more than 10 years, and so it was like you go from 60 to 70, and then 5 years later you're going from 70 to 80. It just seems like it's such a fast pace that the prices are going up that as a consumer it's a little hard to kind of be okay with it because it just seems like at this rate you're like, oh, in 10 years our game's going to be $100.
Well, I mean, GTA could come out next year at 90 and it could make 90 the norm already in less than a year.
And that's just, it's kind of scary to think about, man, because I mean, I know video games are kind of a more luxury hobby, but it just, I don't know, it just seems like there has to be a better middle ground, surely. And I think that kind of like what you were saying, the variable pricing. I think we need to be willing to kind of look at games and be like, okay, so this game could be 50, this game could be 60, this game could, be 65, this game could be, just kind of be willing to experiment with the prices more. But like for this year, for example, I'm just going to go through my list of games that I want for the rest of the year. And like out of all of them, 80% of them aren't full price. You got Final Fantasy Tactics, $50.
Yep.
Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, which I'm assuming is going to be a $20 or $30 game based off
probably
$29.99,
I'd guess.
Yeah. Sword of the Sea, which is probably going to be $30, I'd guess. Marvel Cosmic Invasion, probably going to be $25-$30 based off, once again, that studio's other games. And obviously you have stuff like Ghost of Yotei that's $70, but that's just 4 games right there that none of them are going to be full price. And I'm just as excited for them as any game that's full price.
Yeah.
So
when you look at the landscape of gaming and how we are constantly getting showered with amazing games all the time that we can't keep up with, why wouldn't gamers just start to just focus more on the games they already wanted that are cheaper, right? Like if you have five options and 2 of them are $50 and the other 3 are $80, just play the $50 ones. Yeah,
well, and also games, at least I can speak to this on the PlayStation Store because that's what I use, but games go on sale all the time.
Oh yeah, just wait. Yeah,
like constantly. There are some games I wouldn't wait for, like you said, Last of Us Part 3, but other games I've just waited. And like for example, Baldur's Gate 3, and I wouldn't have had a problem paying $70 for it, but I just didn't get it when it launched. And then about I think between 8 months and a year later, it was on sale for like $50, and I just bought it.
Yeah.
So
why not, right?
Yeah. So that I know like
gamers are going to do that more if the price keeps rising.
I agree. But for me personally, like I just love the idea of there's so many of these cheaper games coming out that are great. Like Sword of the Sea is, like I said, probably going to be about $30. I love the games that they've made before, and it's probably going to be like a between 5 and 10 hours to do everything in it. That's perfectly fine with me. I love the idea of that. Just make these games that are respect your time a little bit more, and they're a little more affordable and cheaper, but they're still high quality. They're just not going to be these 200-hour massive AAA experiences, but not every game needs to be that, so I just more variety and just be willing to experiment with the prices more and stuff. And I think this could be fixed at least somewhat.
I think the problem is that Microsoft is the industry leader for third-party games, and their prerogative is to push it to 80 or higher to funnel people to Game Pass in their own console.
Yeah. But then again, the smaller games, what was it, South of Midnight, you said was $40. So there are still some games that are
and Hellblade, which was also from Microsoft. Now those are smaller games, but it was $50 for Hellblade, and they sold their own Oblivion remaster at $50, which they could have sold at $70.
Yeah, which I think that's a fair price for that game, $50. Sure. But I also agree with what you were saying earlier, though. The Outer Worlds 2 being $80 is just not good look, and clearly the developers agree because it seems like they're not very happy about it based off what I saw.
It just doesn't, it's really not the diss that it seems like, but you don't look at the freaking Outer Worlds as the game that should be one of the priciest franchises on Earth.
And it looks great.
It does look great. I want to play it, but it isn't Final Fantasy. It's not Grand Theft Auto. It's not Halo. It's not God of War. It's the Outer Worlds, bro. Even just being Fallout, just being Fallout would make the 80 make a lot more sense, but it's not. It's just a Fallout like in a franchise that people aren't extremely attached to.
Yeah, well, it's like you said, Ghost of Yotei, Ninja Gaiden 4, Death Stranding 2, Silent Hill F, like all these games are 70 still. 70. So it's just a strange look to be like, okay, this is the game that's gonna push it to 80. It just, I don't know. It's not saying the game looks bad. I think it looks great. But it's just, I don't know. It just seems strange to be that's the game that's pushing it. It's weird.
But consumers will let these companies know with their dollars. When I saw that Final Fantasy Tactics, which is a game I was already interested in playing, when I saw that it was getting a remake and it was going to be $50, I pre-ordered it because I was like, if it was 80, even though I knew I wanted to play it and I'm already a Final Fantasy fan, if it was 80, I think I would have said to myself, well, it's not a mainline Final Fantasy. It's old. I don't know how into tactics games you are. Let's just pass on this one until it goes on sale. Yeah. But the fact that it was 50, I was just, you got me. I'm in. I'm done. You got my money.
Great price, dude. Yeah.